Today video is about introduction to commercial law, which is topic 1 and part B. At the outset, one must distinguish between an offer and an invitation to treat. An offer is a definite undertaking capable of acceptance, whereas an invitation to treat is merely a signal that negotiations are open. Displaying goods in a shop window, as in Fisher versus Bell, does not amount to an offer but an invitation. However, in Carlyle versus Carbolic Smokeball, the advertisement crossed the line into a binding offer because it demonstrated clear intention. Thus, the dividing line lies in whether there is a serious promise capable of acceptance or not. Acceptance in law must mirror the offer precisely, what is termed the mirror image rule. Any deviation amounts to a counteroffer rather than a true acceptance. The postal rule established in Hanthorne versus Fraser remains a notable exception. Acceptance is effective upon posting, even if delayed or lost in transmission. In Masters versus Cameron, the High Court clarified that some agreements are binding only upon the execution of a formal document. The principle underscores the importance of precision in communication. It is right law that not every promise is legally enforceable. The presumption in domestic or social arrangements is that they lack intent to create legal relations, such as in Balfour versus Balfour. Yet, where circumstances indicate seriousness, as in Merritt versus Merritt, the presumption can be rebutted. By contrast, commercial agreements carry the opposite presumption, that parties do intend to be bound, unless proven otherwise. The High Court in Emergenus emphasized the objective nature of this inquiry, focusing on outward conduct rather than subjective intention. Consideration remains a cornerstone of contract law. The notion that a promise must be supported by value, however minimal, provided it is sufficient in law. Yet, equity intervenes through the doctrine of estoppel. As articulated in Central London Property Trust versus High Trees, a party who has induced reliance on a promise may be restrained from resiling. The doctrine took deeper root in Australia in Walton's Stores versus Meher, where unconscionability was recognized as the true basis of estoppel. The case of J. Mentendrai versus Quaglai illustrates the principle in a commercial lease context. Thus, equity tempers the rigidity of consideration by preventing manifest unfairness. At law, contractual capacity is essential. Minors, corporations, and those under intoxication or mental impairment may lack the requisite capacity to bind themselves. Even where capacity is present, genuine consent must also exist. Consent vitiated by duress, undue influence, or unconscionable conduct renders a contract voidable. Duress may involve physical threats, economic coercion, or unlawful detention of goods. Undue influence arises where one party exploits a position of ascendancy, while unconscionable conduct strikes at agreements procured in circumstances of inequality and unfair advantage. The law's concern is to preserve voluntariness in contracting. Contracts as a matter of law may be discharged in several ways: by performance, by mutual agreement, by breach, by frustration, or by operation of law. Now, where there is a breach, remedies become central. Damages are the primary remedy, but they are confined by the principle of remoteness established in Hadley versus Baxendale. This is to say, only losses arising naturally or those within the contemplation of the parties at formation are recoverable. Equitable remedies such as specific performance and injunctions operate to supplement damages where appropriate. In BP Refinery versus Shire of Hastings, the High Court carefully delineated the conditions under which terms may be implied into contracts. Taken together, these doctrines aim to balance certainty with fairness in enforcing bargains. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lesson.